things in there that I think will make a huge difference. And as I say, I spent 5 years working on preventing child trafficking, so I know this area. But one of the things I think is really important that was announced on Tuesday was until now it's been a 3-year time limit on which victims of abuse can bring a personal injury claim, and we're lifting that time limit. And that's so important because the average amount of time it takes a victim of child sexual abuse to come forward is 24 years. I mean, the problem that we have is this is happening in all contexts, and we've found it in churches, but also in care homes and in schools and in grooming gangs. And another really important thing that was announced on Tuesday is proper therapeutic support, doubling the amount of money going into therapeutic support for the victims, because that's how you actually understand what's happened, give them the protections and support that they need, and go after the perpetrators to make sure that they suffer the consequences of what they've done.
Okay, Chris, thanks so much for that. Chris Murray, Labour MP for Edinburgh East and Musselburgh, giving us the perspective on the Labour Party, Labour MPs, Labour backbenchers' response to what the Home Secretary is talking about on grooming gangs. I should just say what the Home Office is saying about this. It's wholly wrong to claim the government's cancelling local child sexual abuse inquiries. We will pursue justice for victims without fear or favour, and claims we would not do so to avoid offending any group are false. We'll be keeping alive to that issue because it looks like it is not one that is going to go away. Now, let's talk about conspiracy theories. How did so many Americans become addicted to them? I mean, I say Americans, it's not just Americans. A lot of Brits have gone down that path too, but let's keep it confined to America for the moment, because in recent years many of them have centred around President Trump, of course, voter fraud, rigged elections, secret groups of elites controlling the US government, but of course they didn't start with him. My next guest has been examining a book published in the US in 1967 that purported to be a leaked government document. It was a huge hit, but even when the hoax was revealed, many refused to believe it wasn't real. Phil Tinline has published his own book now, The Ghosts of Iron Mountain, which tells the story of the original text and how it is still having an impact today. He is with me now. Phil, hello. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Absolutely fascinating tale. I have to say, it's the first I've ever heard of it, the Iron Mountain report in the first place. How did you come to it?
So I was sitting on a Saturday afternoon. What I should have been doing is being out having fun in the sunshine with my kids, and instead I was sitting at my iMac looking at 1960s political science books about the military-industrial complex. Yeah, like you do, because I'm that kind of person. Because I was researching conspiracy theory and this idea of shadowy cabals, and I found 3 different books that all mention this thing called Report from Iron Mountain, and one thought it was true, one thought it was fake, and one wasn't sure. And I thought, hang on a second, this is interesting. I looked it up. There's a couple of paragraphs on Wikipedia with a very, very basic story, and as soon as I found out, I thought, right, this is what I'm going to be doing for the next 2 years. This is just great.
Did you get a copy of the original book?
Yeah, of course, yeah, right. Absolutely, yeah, and that is sitting online.
So it's like widely available?
Yeah, you can find it on archive.org, you can find it online, yeah.
Okay, so what are the circumstances around its original release? Who published it and why?
Okay, so this kicks off in early 1966 when the Vietnam War is really getting going, and there's this brief moment when it looks like peace is going to break out. And on Wall Street, something happens that we've been familiar with the last few days, shares drop. This is called a peace scare, and this is in the headlines as a peace scare. And there's these 3 satirists who've been running a magazine called Monocle, who are sitting in their little office on Fifth Avenue, and they think, hang on a second, shouldn't we be pleased if war is going to stop? Shares should go up, right? So they think, this gives us an idea. Why don't we invent the story of a top-secret government report that's been done to scope out what would happen to America if permanent global peace breaks out, right? And the joke is it would wreck the economy, destroy society, and it's got to be suppressed because it's so incendiary, particularly because it will recommend all sorts of horrific things that will need to be done instead. They bring in
perpetual war.
Yeah, they bring in another writer, and he decides, well, we've got to actually write the report. So he writes the report, and basically it's written like a kind of very dry think tank paper.
Like a classified.
Yeah, exactly. It's weirdly compelling, though, because it recommends all these things that you have to do if war is going to disappear. You would have to reintroduce a sophisticated form of slavery to keep young men under control and get them to play blood games, and reintroduce a form of eugenics to curb the populations. It's absolutely outrageous. Right? It's satire. It's meant to be. It's meant to be totally horrific. But it's published by a publisher called the Dial Press, and this being the 60s, they're like, yeah, fine. Even before he puts pen to paper, they're like, yeah, we'll publish whatever you come up with. We'll publish it as though it's real. Not only that, we won't tell our sales staff that it's all made up. Right? So this is published, and the New York Times phones the White House and says, is this real? And the guy on the phone says, oh, I don't know. And they
it was basically presented as if the authors had found a leak.
It was presented as if the guy doing the introduction, who's actually the guy who wrote it, right, had been leaked it by one of the people on the committee. Okay, so there's this whole paraphernalia at the start, this sort of shaggy dog story about how this guy phones him up and says, you've got to publish this.
Right, there's a story around how he obtained it as well. Right, because I was going to say that needs to be convincing.
Yeah, exactly. So he's supposedly phoned up by a Midwestern professor who's very on edge and says, meet me for lunch in Upper Manhattan, and this guy kind of can't tell the story.
In a shadowy tunnel somewhere.
Exactly, and eventually says, right, you have to publish this report. And so there's a whole kind of, like, as I say, shaggy dog story to set it up. Yeah.
Okay, it's fine. So then it's published, and, I mean, was it a big publisher? Did it got noticed?
Oh, yeah,
immediately?
It's on the New York Times bestseller list. It's on the front page of the New York Times. There's an inquiry, as I say, in the White House. I've got the memos going out to President Johnson, going, can somebody check this? Surely this can't be real. Is it real?
But at this stage, at this stage, there's no discussion about whether it isn't real.
Well, obviously, people are kind of slightly sort of like, it can't be real, but that's what the satirists wanted people to think, right? They want people to just pause for a second. Am I prepared to believe that the American government, while it's fighting the war in Vietnam, is prepared to reintroduce a sophisticated form of slavery? Because if I do think that's possible, what does that say about everything else? That's kind of the point of it. Eventually people work out that it's a hoax, but then they are wondering who wrote it, because the satirists are kind of keeping quiet and watching it all happening. So they think maybe it's Henry Kissinger who's just becoming famous at this point, or Noam Chomsky, a whole bunch of other people. And again, it's really telling that it could be a whole bunch of people. And the guy who wrote it, Leonard Lear, doesn't reveal it till 1972, by which point America's in a much worse state.
1972?
Yeah, 4 years.
Oh my God, so he lasts years.
5 years, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, and then eventually he comes out with it because the Pentagon Papers has published this massive leak of the kind of internal history of the Vietnam War, and he says, well, satire has been trumped by reality. And so he says that he did it, but then it sort of falls out of print because America's no longer the country it was in '67. This is kind of a good problem to have so much money you can just blow it on war. And then in 1990, after years of trying to get it republished and failing, he hears it has been republished. It's been republished by fascists who think it's real.
Right. So why was it taken up by fascists in 1990? What's that road?
Okay, so have you seen the movie JFK?
Yes, many years ago.
Okay, so for people who haven't, which is not...
Well, it's interesting you mentioned JFK, because I was going to say, so obviously the JFK assassination was before this book, so it's not like conspiracy theories, and obviously the massive industry of conspiracy theories around that. You're not saying this is the kind of origin of conspiracy, but in terms of one that really took off. So there was already a kind of ecosystem, if you like, for conspiracy theories at the time of this book being published.
Exactly. There's conspiracy theories going back and back and back. There's the horrible conspiracy theories about the Jews running the world. There's the Pearl Harbor conspiracy, etc., etc. But what happens with Vietnam and with Kennedy is, yes, when Kennedy is shot, some people are like, it can't just have been Oswald, that's too convenient. I mean, why couldn't it have been? But that's what they say. But it's really once Vietnam starts to go really badly wrong around this time that people start to think, well, maybe Kennedy wanted to stop the war in Vietnam, and that's why he had to be killed by the deep state, by the military-industrial complex. So just as it happens, the timing works perfectly. It's round about this exact same time that Jim Garrison, this DA, district attorney in New Orleans, is first starting to investigate the guy that Kevin Costner then plays in the film. It's literally the same autumn in '67 that this is happening. And so in 1991, when the movie comes out, the central character, the insider who explains everything, is actually based on a conspiracy theorist called Fletcher Pruitt, who had worked in the Pentagon, that bit's true, but had become totally obsessed with this report. And he's also the guy who gave it to the far right. They literally photocopy it and republish it.
Okay, so take us forward, because I'm aware of time.
Sure.
Just take us forward. So it's kind of been adopted, and still adopted by the far right, as what, though?
Well, so it's an explanation for why it's evidence of the malign intent of the government, the idea that the government, the deep state, doesn't mean the patriots, real America well. I'm not saying like everybody on the far right is familiar with it, but it's still very much in the bloodstream.
And they're taking it as face value still?
Yeah. It's because the idea that it was really a hoax, you can easily just say, oh, that's a cover story. Of course the establishment are going to tell you it's a hoax once it's been leaked. That's just to kind of get you not to read it.
Right, okay, so what other characters do you bring in after it's been in your book, like the tale that you're telling? Who do you bring in after this kind of 1990 resurfacing? Right,
so there's a guy called Milton William Cooper, who's a Vietnam vet, and he becomes a UFO obsessive, and then he thinks, no, stories of UFOs were a trick by the government to trick the sheeple. He's one of the people who popularizes the word sheeple, right? And he publishes a book called Behold a Pale Horse, which has bits of Iron Mountain in it. has the protocols, the old design in it, horrifically, and has this other hoax in, which is based on reports by a man thing called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, which is supposedly the operations manual for how the elite manipulate the sheeple. And that influenced the X-Files, it influenced Public Enemy, it influenced loads of rappers. There's a rapper even called William Cooper after him. It's the most shoplifted book in America, and it was recommended by Q, as in QAnon, who also talks about the silent war continuing, as does Alex Jones, during COVID. And you can also see the kind of ex-ideologue of the Oath Keepers. He's quoted it too. He's another Vietnam vet.
I mean, when you read it first, were you sort of surprised by just how extreme what it was saying was, and how people could have taken that seriously? I mean, did it strike you immediately as something that was just preposterous?
Well, kind of. And obviously, if you know the secret, then you're always going to feel wiser.
Right? You're not coming to it fresh, yeah.
But the really weird thing was, even though I knew that, as I was reading through it, because I read a lot of think tank papers, my brain went into that mode, and so I'd be reading it along as though it's kind of slightly eyes glazing over, just flipping through this very dry prose, and then it'll suddenly say, we have to reintroduce slavery. You know? So it's a really weird experience to read. It's weirdly compelling.
And I mean, you know, when it was published, we're talking pre-internet age, obviously. I mean, what is the kind of modern equivalent in terms of how it's spread? You know, if you're looking at comparing when that came out and the spread of that and how it was talked about, how would something like that happen today?
Well, the weird thing is, if you did it today, right, on the one hand, it would spread way faster, obviously, right? On the other hand, it'd be so much harder to do it. Now, Leonard Lewin has his name on the cover of this book. He's just published a compilation of American political humour. It would take someone 5 minutes to go, hang on a minute.
To join the dots. Oh, I see. Because the authors wouldn't have the anonymity.
I think hoaxes are harder now in that sense. They spread faster, but you catch them faster. Everything just spreads faster. So.
How has this kind of influenced your thinking on how receptive people are now to conspiracy theories? I mean, we talked about, you know, just in America, but obviously here as well, there's huge numbers.
Well, so I'm instinctively really wary of this idea of sheeple, the idea that everybody except me is really easily manipulated and I'm the only wise one. I just don't think that is very persuasive. It's also not very democratic. On the other hand, you do have to be aware of why people believe this stuff. So I guess what it made me really focus in on is the reasons why people feel the need for this kind of explanation. And I think rather than trying to tackle conspiracy theory by kind of finger wagging or mocking or fact checking, some of which is useful, you also have to go upstream of that and say, well, why are people in this state of mind where they feel like they need an explanation? We know from political science it's often to do with a shock defeat, feeling humiliated, feeling disempowered. So I kind of think that they're the red flashing warning lights on the dashboard of democracy. You kind of have to work out why people feel like that, fix that, and then fewer people will fall for them.
Phil, thanks so much for talking us through your fascinating book. What an amazing find to stumble upon that old book. Phil's book, Phil Tinline is your full name. Ghosts of Iron Mountain. I think you can read that now. Thanks so much for talking us through that, so you can find out all about that fantastic theory there. Now, let me quickly tell you about tomorrow. Do we have time for this? Once again, we will be joined by some of the team behind BBC's Ukraine Cast podcast to answer your questions. I'm going to be speaking to Vitaly Shevchenko, co-presenter of Ukraine Cast, Lise Doucette, BBC Chief International Correspondent, Olga Robinson from BBC Verify. You can, of course, text in all of your questions in advance, anything you want to know about the latest. I mean, it does feel like it's got a bit quiet. We've been focused on tariffs. Ukraine was all we were talking about a few weeks ago, but do text in your questions in advance. The number is 85058. You can WhatsApp us, leave us a voice note, 08085 909 693. Find us on social media at BBC 5 Live. That is going to be Ukraine Cast here on 5 Live from 3 o'clock tomorrow. Text in your questions, the number again, 85058. The number for WhatsApp, 08085 909 693. I'll be back at 2 o'clock. Drive us up next with Chris and Claire.
The voice of the UK. 5 Live Drive with Chris Warburton and Claire McDonald.
Layla, thank you very much indeed. It's for... pause on higher tariffs for all countries except China. Beijing's retaliatory tariffs on American goods came into force this morning, and stock markets on Wall Street have opened slightly down. James Early is the CEO of Curia Research and Industrial Strategy Group. He told 5 Live the US and China are in uncharted territory.
I don't think anybody prepared for this. I think this is way more than they expected. With tariffs literally this high, with the prices of goods roughly doubled, almost doubled from U.S. to China, more than doubled from China to the U.S., this deal as it stands will kill trade.
The government department run by one of Sir Keir Starmer's most senior ministers is cutting nearly a third of its staff. Around 1,200 people will be made redundant at the Cabinet Office, with another 900 being transferred to other departments. The government wants to cut civil service costs by 15%. The BBC's been told the government has offered to buy the coal that keeps steel production going in Scunthorpe on behalf of British Steel's Chinese owners. The company has been warning for days that the raw materials needed to keep its 2 blast furnaces operational are running out. These people in Scunthorpe shared their thoughts on the plant's future.
Without the steelworks, you lose part of the town, really.
It'd just be a ghost town if the steelworks go.
It's not a popular opinion. Environmentally, I think it'd be much better for the town for health reasons if the steelworks shut down. It would be nice if we could use that land to create as many jobs for something more environmentally friendly.
The steelworks should be renationalised, should never have been sold in the first place.
The UK's Defence Secretary has opened a meeting of 30 defence ministers from across the world in Brussels. The group, which calls itself the Coalition of the Willing, will discuss ways to support a lasting peace in Ukraine. Don Healey says the coalition must be ready to respond if the war ends.
We're stepping up. We're serious. We're sending a signal to President Putin and to Minister Umerov and the Ukrainian people. We stand with you in the fight, and we will stand with you in the peace.
And scientists mapping a tiny part of a mouse's brain have found it to be so complex it resembles a galaxy. The study, which mapped more than 500 million connections, has been published in Nature magazine. Now, Molly, another big night of football last night. We've got another big night of football tonight.
What?
When will it end?
What a weakness. The Adam Masters is underway.
Oh, yes, well,
It's been a heck of a busy day.
we've got more. Rory McIlroy is teeing off during this
I
programme.
know, you get all the big fill in. Brilliant news.
News has it that he's mentally tight and physically loose.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he says that about himself.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, he
Interesting.
says about
No, I know he
himself,
does.
Molly.
It was an
Just hearing you say it, Claire, is just wonderful.
I
Even
remember it
better.
was an Arthur Ashe quote, wasn't it?
Was it?
That he had taken.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
For Arthur Ashe.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
And if it works for Rory McIlroy, I mean, we'll see if it does, because is this the year that Rory McIlroy will don the famous green jacket? He tees off at 12 minutes past 6 this evening. Chris has already teed it up for you. Golf correspondent Ian Carter will bring us the very latest throughout Drive. Hello, Ian.
Hello, Molly. We've got plenty of UK interest already on the leaderboard, even though it's still a couple of hours before we see McIlroy playing. Aaron Rai is in a share of the lead with Joaquin Niemann, the Chilean, who has birdied 3 of his first 4 holes. Rai, on his Masters debut, 3 under after 7. Those two are leading. Tyrrell Hatton is at 1 under par. He has birdied his opening hole, and Bob McIntyre off to a good start as well. The Scot at 1 under after 5.
Yes, commentary from Ian to come on Sports Extra this evening from 8 o'clock, and before then you can follow the action as it happens on the BBC Sport website, and as we said, we'll keep you up to date here in Drive 2. A busy night of football to come in 5 Live Sport. Crucial matches for Manchester United, Tottenham and Rangers in their Europa League quarter-final first legs, while Chelsea are in Conference League action. And England make 3 changes for their Women's Six Nations match against Ireland on Saturday. Alex Matthews returns at 8 after completing her ban. Props Hannah Bottoman and Maud Muir start.
Thank you very much indeed. Orna is here with a travel. Afternoon, Orna.
Good afternoon, Claire. It's looking busy on the motorways. We've had some motorway queues. The M6 is looking slow on the southbound side down towards the Croft interchange, which is the M62 at 21A. The M62 in West Yorkshire heading west at 25 for Brickhouse. There was a breakdown. It's gone from the scene. And the M1 at junction 40 at Ossett, again in West Yorkshire, heading south. There was another breakdown there. That's just been removed as well. Those queues are starting to ease. The M4 Berkshire and eastbound at junction 5 for Langley to 4B at the M25. A lorry's broken down in one of the lanes. The M25, quite a few areas to watch. So clockwise at 27 near the M11, that was the broken down van. There was an accident in the same area as well. So the queues are back to 25 at Enfield clockwise. Clockwise again at junction 12, that's at the M3 interchange. We've got an accident. That's in one of the lanes. Clockwise queues at 15 on the western side near the M4. The earlier accident's been moved, but the queues are still there, backing up to 13 at Staines. And there are also delays across the top from 23 at South Mimms, heading towards 24 at Potter's Bar. Again, that was an accident which has been moved. There are anti-clockwise queues at 13 Staines and around Heathrow as well at junction 14. It looks as though all traffic is now at a standstill at junction 13 on the anti-clockwise M25. Warner Merchant, 5 Live Travel.
On BBC iPlayer, if you're raised in some of the world's toughest neighbourhoods, what lengths will people go to survive?
The brutality that we see today is shocking. I think it's shocking for everyone.
I'm Ashley Kane, extreme ultra athlete and former pro footballer. I'm going to some of the most hostile places on the planet to meet those who have chosen a life of extreme criminality. Do you regret what happened?
Honestly, no.
I may not condone what they do, but can I at least understand them? Into the Danger Zone with me, Ashley Kane. Watch all episodes on BBC iPlayer.
This is BBC Radio's 5 Live. 5 Live Drive.
With Claire McDonald and Chris Warburton.
On digital radio.
On BBC Sounds. And ask your smart speaker
to play BBC Radio 5 Live.
Good afternoon, welcome to 5 Live Drive. Chris and Claire with you 6 minutes past 4. Hope the sun is shining on you. Wherever you are listening to us this afternoon, it's shining on us.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful out there.
Still going.
Still going. We're going to update you in the next hour on what is going on with British Steel at the moment. There's a Ukrainian spring offensive that there's talk of. Ukrainians say the Russians have already started that spring offensive. We're going to be talking about the Masters.
We'll talk about the Masters in Carter very shortly. We've got football, we've got Manchester United to look out for, we've got Spurs to look out for, we've got Rangers to look out for, and we've also got new music for the first time in 24 years from Pulp.
And it's good. It is very, very good. So we'll play you a snatch of their new single. But let's start here. It's been another day of to and fro on tariffs. The EU has suspended its plans to impose 25% import taxes on US goods for 90 days. Now, this follows on from President Trump deciding his side to suspend higher tariffs for all countries except China.
Yep, Beijing and Washington continue their trade war then. China's retaliatory tariffs on American goods came into force this morning. Goods entering the US from China are now taxed at a whopping 125%. Those going the other way, charged at 84%. President Trump, for his part, is unrepentant.
No other president would have done what I did. No other president. I know the presidents, they wouldn't have done it. And it had to be done. What was happening to us on trade, not only with, you know, if you look at it, not only with China, but China was by far the biggest abuser in history, and others also, but somebody had to do it. They had to stop because it was not sustainable.
Well, it has been something of a roller coaster for all of us, so let's now draw breath and have a quick recap of the past 8 days in the world tariff war, right here on Drive. We are just hours away from finding out about the tariffs President Trump is expected to place on goods entering America from around the world.
In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal. That means they do it to us and we do it to them.
The usual smiles and cheers as the markets opened in New York. Didn't last long though, to be honest.
White House showed they're working. There's this formula, and you've probably seen it. I've looked at this. It doesn't make for great radio. It's a lot of Greek symbols, basically. It's all Greek to everything.
We will keep calm and fight for the best deal with the US, and we've been discussing that intensely over the last few days. But we are also going to work with our key partners to accelerate trade deals with the rest of the world.
Well, let's speak to our Money and Work reporter, Peter Ruddock, now. Hi, Peter.
Good afternoon.
Here we are again.
We're on a bit of an economical roller coaster, and the world seems to be hanging on the next bon mot from Donald Trump.
That's one word for it.
New 50% tariff on imports from China could be brought in.
Eye-watering, isn't it?
What are we now, tit for tat for tit?
I'm telling you, these countries are calling themselves kissing my ass. Please, please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything. I'll do anything, sir. Let me tell you, you don't negotiate like I negotiate.
If you look at the markets, there is a suggestion, I think, especially when you look at US treasuries, which is US government debt. There have been some really quite significant worrying moves in US Treasury debt, which is usually a safe haven. It's usually where you go to when you're a bit worried about what's going to happen, which maybe suggests that actually investors are betting if one side has got the upper hand at the moment, it's not the US. This is all really about who's going to blink first.
This was the plan. Of course, the plan never goes perfectly according to plan.
Should we talk again in a fortnight, Kenneth?
Absolutely. You need to get a podcast so I can go there, we can chat across the table.
Live pitch to BBC Sounds there, I think you did.
I'm not sure they'd go into it.
Breaking news that's come down in the last few minutes. Donald Trump has announced on his social media platform that he's to pause his tariffs on global trade with the US for 90 days. The one exception is China. How big and significant a moment is this?
It's huge. The US president has blinked.
Well, we can go back to my new podcast partner, Kenneth Raposa, well, I just wasn't expecting it to be this soon, Kenneth. I mean, look, as an American who has supported this, isn't this just all a bit embarrassing?
Yes, today is embarrassing.
Okay, all right. I thought it might help. Let's bring in our correspondent, Zoe Conway. Afternoon, Zoe.
Good afternoon.
So it's not only daily updates, as that little montage illustrated, it can be hourly updates that we need to bring people with this tariff war, the back and the forth. So remind us where we are today at 4:10 on a Thursday afternoon. What is the latest?
The latest. Well, I'm here to talk about British Steel and Scunthorpe, and I'm not able to update you on tariffs, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, let's talk about that and how this feeds into what we're talking about.
I think it's a really important part of what's going on here. We've had talks that started at 1 o'clock this afternoon between government officials, between British Steel and their representatives in London, and between their owners, Jingye, in Beijing. I understand that these were 3 groups of people that had a video call, and we still don't know the outcome of that meeting, and I'm being told that it may just be that we're not going to get this resolved today. The reason why they got together was because, as the BBC has been reporting since last night, the raw materials at Scunthorpe are running out. They need iron ore and coking coal to keep those blast furnaces going. And what the BBC understands is that the government has offered to buy coal to keep them going. Now, this probably sounds somewhat extraordinary to people listening. We don't know whether the Chinese owners of British Steel are going to let the government pay for that coal. Now, that might sound completely nonsensical. Why wouldn't they say, thank you, that's free coal? We don't actually really know at this stage whether the company wants to do a temporary deal with the government to keep the blast furnaces going over the next few months until they reach an agreement about the future of the plant. And so it's really uncertain what's going on. But just to answer your question about tariffs, I just think that we need to think here about what's going on in the world. This is a company that is underwritten by the Chinese state, and there is a big question mark here about what happens to all that Chinese steel that is not going to go to the United States because of these tariffs. Is a lot of this Chinese steel going to be looking for somewhere to go? And is there an argument that says if Scunthorpe is allowed to go under, then the UK becomes a great buyer of Chinese steel? So there's a lot going on here, I think.
Listen, thank you so much for the update on that, and apologies for throwing you a curveball about the wider picture, but it's good that we got back to the tariffs. That's our correspondent Zoe Conway. We'll return to look at what's going on with the steel industry in Scunthorpe a little bit more depth shortly here on the programme. Let's get back to the story that's overshadowing all of this. US
tariffs, of course. Denise Cole is the financial director of the Newport-based company Tuma-E, which is Tuma-E Valve. They make high-performance butterfly valves, and last week Denise told us that this 10% tariff on British businesses could actually be good for her, as her main competition in Asia was hit with higher tariffs. And Denise, welcome back.
Hi.
So let's update on the last week then. When you had the news that you were going to be hit with these 10% tariffs, and in some ways you were pretty happy about that, weren't you? Because other people around the world, maybe in Asia, were actually going to have a worse deal than you, which kind of went in your favour, didn't it?
Yeah, it helped us a lot. I mean, all this is far too much for an old bird to get her head round, but export of any kind to any country is unpredictable. There are all sorts of problems. We used to deal with Russia a lot and Ukraine. We lost that business. We've got a large base in Iran, and that kind of comes and goes when we're allowed to sort of trade with them. The American customers that I've been speaking to all day today are still sticking with us because of the uncertainty of where the tariffs would be. And our projects are long lead build times, so it can be 3, 4, 5 months after an order before it's ready for dispatch. And it's the point of dispatch that the tariffs hit. So it hasn't at the moment made a real difference. People who switched over to us initially are staying with us for now.
Right, that's good. So you've drawn up an alternative business plan, have you? What did you do in the last week?
Several. We had Teams meetings with all the American customers, which are now sort of all out of the ballpark because of the change. It's difficult. It's hard to know. We've given up 5-year plans and gone to 5-minute plans at the moment. You know, it changes all the time. But for us at the moment, it's still okay. Fortunately, we deal with lots of other countries as well, so we're not solely reliant on US trade.
Yeah, and given the fact that the British government has come in for quite a bit of flack, hasn't it, for like not standing up to Donald Trump and maybe introducing reciprocal tariffs and having a much kind of hardened line. But then again, since we've seen what we've seen in the last 24 hours, do you think they've been playing quite a smart, long game because things can change very quickly?
Yeah, they can't do anything. I mean, because we were only hit with 10%, they had to wait and see what was going to happen. We were in the fortunate position of being able to let somebody else test the water to see what his reaction would be. I don't even think having a UK trade deal will help us. I think the only thing they really need to sort out is the tariffs on cars and steel, because we're never going to come to an agreement as far as the pharmaceutical and the agricultural deal is concerned. So just keeping quiet at the moment, I think is the best thing they can do, and just see how it plays out. I don't think it's brave for anybody to stick their head above the parapet at the moment.
So for the next 90 days, you have the 10% still. Are you just going to carry on business as usual and not waste energy worrying about what might happen after the 90 days?
I don't think we can, because we've got absolutely no input. Unfortunately, he doesn't phone me and ask for my advice or help or anything, you know. But so there's nothing practical we can do about it. So it's really just a waste of time worrying about what may or may not happen, because I don't think anybody can actually second guess where he's going to go next. I think the main reason for him changing is he couldn't have possibly done trade negotiations with all the countries that he hit. So I think what he's done now is just given them all a flat base and saying, come to me with something, and, you know, we can either negotiate or not negotiate. So he can kind of do trade deals en masse with everybody.
Yeah, Denise, well, listen, we'll check back in with you in 90 days. or maybe sooner. You never know.
Yeah, possibly.
Denise Cole, financial director. Good luck with it all, Denise.
Thank you. Cheers.
Denise Cole, financial director of the Newport-based company Tuma-E, which is a valve company. They make performance butterfly valves, 20+4.
Yeah, I remember learning what a performance butterfly valve is the last week. Good knowledge to have in life. Now, if we were to play you this, where does it take you back to? Yeah, well, I don't really need to tell you that one, but Pulp have announced their first new album, shared their first single in almost 24 years.
It's good.
Is it good? I've not heard it yet.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit of it in the office. I love it.
That's good to hear. I think they have played a couple of the songs when they did a mini kind of tour, didn't they?
Yes.
Was it last year?
I think they did a comeback tour in 2023 and they played a lot of festivals, and Jarvis Cocker in an interview with Six Music today said, we tried out a couple of new tracks and people didn't chuck stuff at us.
Yes.
So
or
we
go
thought,
to the bar.
Or go to the bar.
Yes.
So we thought, we're onto something.
There you go. So look, we're going to hear from a music journalist and self-confessed Pulp super fan before 5 o'clock.
Yes, we are. Speaking of fans, the Europa League quarterfinals gets underway later with Manchester United, Spurs and Rangers all in first leg action. And we're also going to be finding out how United fans are feeling ahead of their match in Lyon. Full commentary of that game, along with regular updates from the rest here on 5 Live.
BBC Radio 5 Live.
The voice of the UK.
They've got no choice. They just want to be part of something.
I was worried about what that might do to me and my career.
It's the best thing I ever did.
5 Live Drive.
With Claire McDonald and Chris Warburton.
Right, the Rory McIlroy tournament is underway, otherwise known as the Masters, at Augusta, of course. We've got all of the coverage, the commentary here on 5 Live and 5 Sports Extra over the next 4 days. Our golf correspondent Ian Carter, part of our team, as always, and we can speak to him now. Where exactly are you, Ian?
Well, I've got an overview really in the what's known as the content centre here, where I can see as much of the course as you possibly can. It's really weird at the Masters, Chris, because the coverage doesn't kick in until the afternoon. But if you've got the right access and feeds and you go on the apps and all of that kind of thing, then you can piece it all together with featured groups and coverage of areas of the course like Amen Corner. So you've got a pretty good idea where I'm sitting. I'm actually going to be heading out onto the golf course in the next 10-15 minutes or so. So the next time I speak to you will be from the famed Amen Corner overlooking the 11th green and the 12th. And it's all very exciting at the moment from a British point of view, because we have a British leader, the man from Wolverhampton making his debut, Aaron Rai, 4 under par, 1 shot clear of the field as he plays the 9th.
Well, that's magic. What a start. I was listening to your preview programme on 5 Live just last night, and I heard you mentioning him. Okay, so that's one for me to get my head around. I mean, you know, so much in the build-up to this, as there was last night as well. Ian, McIlroy this, Scheffler that. How often does the favourite actually win?
I think it's fair to say that it's a valid question, because often the case in golf, the favourite doesn't win. It's that kind of random sport. But what I would say is in recent years you've had Scotty Scheffler win twice in the last 3 years, undisputed world number 1. John Rahm as a world number 1 was the winner in between times. So I get the feeling that we're in an era at the moment where you have to be from the very top draw to be winning these majors. It seems like there is that separation between the absolute class of the field and the rest, which at certain times in the history of the sport hasn't been there, but it feels like it is at the moment. And I think that's why there's been so much conversation in the build-up to the Masters over Scotty Scheffler, who, by the way, is now at 2 under par. He's just holed a big putt on the 4th to get to 2 under par, so within 2 shots of the lead already. And, of course, Rory McIlroy, because he's won twice already this year. He's in great form. And, of course, this is the one major that he's not won. And if he were to win it, then he would catapult himself among the all-time greats of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got John Rahm, you've got Xander Schauffele, you've got Colin Morikawa. Who is another in-form player that we might not necessarily have our eye on at the moment, Ian?
Well, I'd throw Bryson DeChambeau into that conversation as well. He's not so much under the radar because he is the US Open champion, but playing on the Live Tour, those players have been kind of somewhat overshadowed in the build-up to the Masters, but I think he could go very well this week, and likewise Brooks Koepka for the same reasons as well. So I think we've covered the main bases of those players, but then if you go a little bit further down, someone like Bob McIntyre has been putting together really good results very consistently. He's not been outside the top 11 basically this year, and he's played in some very big events. He finished top 10 at the Players' Championship, and he's off to a decent start, the Scot. He's 1 under par after 6 holes so far.
Okay, all right, so we've got Rory starting in just under a couple of hours, haven't we?
Yeah, 12 minutes past 6 your time, Chris.
All right, we'll be on top of that. We'll speak to you, I'm sure, hopefully later. Cheers, Ian. Thank you for now. Our golf correspondent, of course, Ian Carter. The coverage tonight is going to be on 5 Sports Extra starting at 8 o'clock. Then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it will start 9 o'clock in the evening on 5 Live. I'm doing that, as you notice, Claire, off the top of my head.
You're pointing at me while you're doing it as well.
I'm pointing vaguely, and then I'm pointing at my own head.
Right.
That is always slightly dangerous territory, but I think I'm right.
I think you're probably right. I listen every year in bed Sunday night when I have to get up early. I never have it off. And I would maybe put a little flutter on Tommy Fleetwood.
Oh, yeah.
Because last year he did finish third. I think, yeah, he did. He tied for third. His best ever finish.
All right.
Always excels at the big events, Tommy Fleetwood, but it'd be fantastic to see him do well. But anyway, always fantastic commentary, and we'll be back for Rory McIlroy's tee-off time around about 10 past 6 on our programme. Now, defence ministers have a meeting in Brussels to talk about how to support Kyiv in the event of a peace deal with Russia. The meeting is being hosted by Britain and France. It focused on operational plans for a multinational peacekeeping force. The Defence Secretary, John Healey, spoke to the Coalition of the Willing earlier.
Our plans are well developed, and we have clear objectives for Ukraine. First, to secure safe skies. Second, to secure safe seas. Third, to support a peace on the land. And fourth, to support the Ukrainian armed forces to become their own strongest possible deterrent. But we cannot jeopardize the peace by forgetting about the war, and the daily reality for millions of Ukrainians continues. So we must put more pressure on President Putin to end his war.
Well, President Zelensky says at least 155 Chinese citizens are fighting for Russia in the war after 2 Chinese fighters were captured earlier this week. And the commander of Ukraine's armed forces says Russia has begun a spring offensive in the northeast of the country, despite US-led ceasefire talks continuing. Let's get more detail on all of this with Melinda Herring, a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Melinda, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Let's start in Brussels then. 30 countries there, the Coalition of the Willing, led by the UK and France. Did anything come out of that we haven't heard before, or are we still where we were before?
Not really, Claire. So the major story from Brussels is that they're getting closer to coming up with a deal in Europe, but the U.S. is not participating, and there's still a lot of hesitancy. So let me focus in on 2 countries. Poland and Greece, for example, have said that they can't provide troops to some kind of force because they face threats from Belarus in Poland, and then the Greeks say that they face threats from the Turks. So there's still a lot to be worked out here.
And where does it leave the possible ceasefire talks? Because it's all very, all well and good saying, okay, we'll get these 30 countries together with the Coalition of the Willing, we'll work out what we're going to do once there's a ceasefire, when you have what looks like an already started Russian spring offensive.
Clearly, there is no ceasefire, and there was no ceasefire a week ago or the week before. So Russia hit a Kryvyi, which is where President Zelensky's from, and killed about 8 children last week. He hit a playground, and the Russians have continuously hit civilian targets since the quote-unquote ceasefire. So there is no ceasefire, and the White House doesn't seem to be putting any pressure on Moscow. So, it makes this whole effort in Brussels seem a little absurd. And many of the countries of the 30 that are participating in these discussions say they want the U.S. to be involved in some kind of backstop, and they still don't seem to have gotten the message that the U.S. is not interested and is not going to participate.
And do you think Europe now is maybe looking at a worst-case scenario of putting this peacekeeping force together without the U.S., or is there a hope, even at this stage, that President Trump saying he wants it done, he's the deal maker, he's going to be the one to bring about this ceasefire? Is there a hope that he will get frustrated with Putin, given the fact that he's got this new offensive going on, and act against Russia's interests, which may force Putin into a climb down?
Look, anything is possible with Donald Trump, and Donald Trump has said that he's frustrated with Putin. He's frustrated that Putin won't answer him and won't do the things that he's pledged to do, and that he seems to be playing for time. But Trump has threatened to put more sanctions in place. He's threatened tariffs, and he didn't do anything on tariffs, and he had an obvious chance to do that recently. So I think in this case, the domestic agenda in the U.S. has moved on, and I hope that at some point the U.S. That Donald Trump will be so aggravated that he was outplayed by Moscow and come back to this and start pushing, but I don't see any momentum here at the moment.
Thank you for joining us, Melinda. That is Melinda Herring, a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Just after 4:30, let's get the news headlines.
The voice of the UK.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Stock markets on Wall Street have opened slightly down after a resurgence yesterday. Asian and European markets have made gains after President Trump's decision to pause tariff hikes for 90 days against all countries except China. Barclays has become the biggest UK lender so far to cut mortgage rates as the uncertainty around US tariffs continues. It's reduced rates on some of its fixed-term deals to 3.99%. Turbulence in the markets has raised expectations of interest rate cuts. The BBC has been told the government has offered to buy the coking oil that keeps steel production going in Scunthorpe. Talks about the future of the plant are continuing with its Chinese owners, and Pulp have announced their first new album for 24 years. More, which will be released in June, is dedicated to the band's late bass player Steve Mackey.
And the single, which we'll play a little snatch from, is that there's a refrain in it which is taken from the DJ, because Spike Island was held up as this kind of monumental kind of zeitgeisty gig.
Yeah.
But the reality of it
Stone Roses gig.
The Stone Roses gig was the sound was bad, it was terrible, it was very windy, and the DJ, what was the phrase he kept repeating, Chris?
Spike Island come alive.
Spike Island come alive, because, the crowd was really flat. And this is a kind of sister song to Sorted for Ease and Whiz, which is, Pulp frontman Jarvis Cocker famously overheard a woman at the Lead Mill in Sheffield sort of saying to people, "Oh, you sorted for Ease and Whiz." So he's got a kind of good ear for overhearing things, noises off at gigs, and then making them into something a lot more than that. So we'd love to hear from you this afternoon. What have you overheard at gigs?
Or the theatre.
Or the theatre. Any kind of performance. It could have been on the stage, it could have been noises off.
From the audience.
From the audience. I can't say which band it was, but my brother and my sister-in-law at a gig recently, and overheard a woman saying, "I'm not sure how much more of this I can take." I mean, it wasn't good.
Not good, that, is it?
It's not good.
The sad thing is,
I cannot name the band. Someone take away.
I know the band.
Fair.
She was telling me earlier.
Yeah. No,
I'm not going to reveal it.
It was a woman coming out of the toilet saying to her husband, "I'm not sure how much more of this can take." That kind of thing. So overheard on a night out, at a gig, at a performance, could have been on the stage, off the stage, noises off. 85058.
Maybe even at a restaurant. That can open it up there,
Open it up, man.
Yeah, there it is. Right, Molly is here with the sports news.
I am. Let's go live to Augusta and the 89th Masters. Our golf correspondent Ian Carter is there. Now, Ian, Aaron Rai is having the dream debut so far. Bring us the latest.
Yes, we've only had one winner as a debutant of the Masters after the initial one, of course, which was won by Horton Smith back in 1934. Fuzzy Zeller was the other first-time winner, but Aaron Rai has that opportunity and is off to a great start on his debut, as you say, Molly. He's gone to the turn in 32, 4 under par, birdies at the second, the third, the 7th and the 8th, and he leads by 1 from Germany's Steven Jaeger. He's at 3 under par. Scotty Scheffler off to a good start, 2 under after 4. So too Tyrrell Hatton, the Englishman, at 2 under after 4. The bad news of Bob McIntyre, I was telling you about him being at 1 under par just a few moments ago. Double bogey at 7. He's gone to 1 over. A reminder, Rory McIlroy tees off at 12 minutes past 6 your time.
Yes, we wait with bated breath. Thank you very much, Ian. Updates continue with Ian and the team throughout Drive this evening with commentary on Sports Extra from 8 o'clock tonight, and you can follow the action on the BBC Sport website. Now, Liverpool fans might want to listen up. There's growing expectation at the club that Virgil van Dijk and Mohamed Salah will sign new contracts soon. Following months of discussions, it is understood they'll both agree to 2-year contracts. Neither deal is complete yet, but it's understood it would take a remarkable turn of events for Van Dijk or Salah not to be Liverpool players at the start of next season. Tonight, 5 Live Sport will bring you commentary of Manchester United away to Lyon in the first leg of their Europa League quarter-final. United manager Ruben Amorim says the competition's important for a number of reasons, including them winning a title.
In this season, in this context, winning something like that is massive for us, for our confidence. And then, to the future, to the next season. To play Champions League in our club is completely different. The environment, the way we are going to face the summer, the budget for the summer, everything is connected.
We'll also keep you across Tottenham against Eintracht Frankfurt and Rangers against Athletic Bilbao. Chelsea are in Conference League quarter-final action. First leg for them too, away to Legia Warsaw. Tennis and Great Britain captain Anne Kyothafong says the lack of top 20 players at the Billie Jean King Cup is a tennis problem, not a player problem. Only 3 of the world's top 20 will compete in this week's qualifying rounds, with Poland's Iga Świątek and American trio Jessica Pegula, Coco Gauff and Madison Keys among those absent. Britain, meanwhile, are without Emma Raducanu, who has opted to train and look after her body after her Miami Open quarter-final run in her 7th event of the year. Kyothafong has reacted to her omission.
It's disappointing we don't have her on this team, but I totally understand what she needs to do, and a player's got to do what a player's got to do, what's best for them, and she's given a lot to this team, and she may not be with us this time round, but I hope in the future she will be.
British tennis #1 Jack Draper is out of the Monte Carlo Masters. He lost his 3rd round match in 3 sets against Spain's Alejandro Davidovich Fokina. And in rugby union, England make 3 changes for their Women's Six Nations match against Ireland on Saturday. Alex Matthews returns at 8. Props Hannah Bottoman and Maud Moore start. That's your latest from BBC Sport.
Molly, thanks very much indeed. All is here with the travel. Hello.
Hello, Claire. So the latest on the M8 in Renfrewshire on the eastbound side at 27 for Paisley. There's a breakdown blocking one of the lanes, and that's why the traffic is so heavy. The M6 has been queuing in quite a few places, really. First of all, around Preston at junction 31 on the southbound side. The M55 eastbound towards the M6 is queuing from 1 at Forward. At the M6 again, so this is in Cheshire on the southbound side. It's busy from 20 at Lymm. The M56 down to 19 at Knutsford. And then at junction 18 at Holmes Chapel, there's a breakdown which has closed one of the lanes. The A556 nearby, near the M56 at junction 7 for Bowden, has one lane closed now because of an accident. It's not closed, you can get past it, but it is affecting you on that southbound side down to the motorway, the M56 junction 7. M62 westbound approaching Manchester, Hayward through to Simister Island looking heavy now at junction 19. The A1 is closed northbound in South Yorkshire at Redhouse near the A1M at junction 38. M5 a breakdown, stop-start traffic at Droitwich at 5 northbound. The M5 is queuing as well if you're heading up from Halesowen, it's north of there up to the M6. Then the M25, so anti-clockwise queues on the western stretch of the main really. So from 14 to 13, Heathrow to 13 at Staines, that's where the breakdown and the accident was. Anti-clockwise queues along the bottom at the M26, it's at junction 5 there, but all lanes have just reopened. Clockwise queues on the western stretch, and also anti-clockwise queues into the Dartford tunnels taking half an hour as well on the M25. Warner Merchant, 5 Live Travel.
Walker scores! When certain opportunities come, you have to take it.
The Manchester City club captain Carl Walker has joined AC Milan on loan.
I'm Carl Walker.
And I'm Michael Brown.
And welcome to the Carl Walker podcast with me in Milan and Brownie in Manchester.
Walker charges brilliantly. You can ask us anything about football, our careers, and about Kyle's life in Italy, or just random everyday stuff.
They're the moments that you do pinch yourself in being a kid from Sheffield.
The Kyle Walker Podcast.
Listen on BBC Sounds.
BBC Radio 5 Live.
The voice of the UK.
They've got no choice. They just want to be part of something.
I was worried about what that might do for me and my career.
It's the best thing I ever did.
5 Live Drive.
With Claire McDonald and Chris Warburton.
Tell us what you've overheard at an event. It could be a music event, could be a sports event, anything at all really. Theatre Martin, Afternoon Martin in South Dartmoor says, heard at the bar whilst watching the Nottingham Forest match in a Welsh pub last week, somebody said, there's a bit of an intellectual bent to this football chant.
we need to lower the tone.
Chat. Football chat.
Football chat.
Yeah.
I thought he meant chant. Or both. There's a bit of it. We need to lower the tone in our football chat. There's a time and a place, apparently, says Martin in South Dartmoor. Overheard at the bar, at the theatre, at the gig. We're going to be talking about this because Jarvis Cocker has made the title of their new single something everybody overheard at the Spike Island Stone Roses gig. That is the title of their new album. And it was the DJ shouting, Spike Island, come alive, Spike Island, come alive. What do you overheard at a gig, a sporting event, anything at all? 85058.
In about an hour's time, Chelsea are going to kick off in the Conference League quarter-finals against Legia Warsaw, so we'll bring you updates on that when they get going, and we're going to talk about Manchester United before 5 o'clock as well, because they are away to Lyon, so we'll look ahead to that shortly. Meanwhile, the government's been meeting the Chinese owners of British Steel to discuss its future. Ministers are offering to buy the coking coal that's essential to keep the company's 2 blast furnaces in Scunthorpe operating. Colin Todd is from the GMB union.
They need to have an agreement with the government to ensure raw materials are bought and arrive at the site to ensure that the blast furnaces are running, so then we can buy us a bit of time so we can decide what's going to happen with the future of British Steel at Scunthorpe.
There have also been calls for the company to be nationalised, as we were talking about on the programme quite a bit yesterday. The local MP there is Sir Nick Dakin.
The uncertainty needs to end, and it needs to end quickly. But the government has stepped in. It's stepped in with an offer to work in partnership with this company. It's stepped in with an offer to secure the raw material supply to this company. And if necessary, I'm certain that it will step in to take full control of this company.
Well, we've just had an update about the talks, actually. Issues under discussion, we're told, are still unresolved. Negotiations are ongoing, and it looks like they may well roll on into tomorrow. Let's find out how the town is feeling. Our correspondent Eunice Muller has been in Scunthorpe throughout the day, just trying to get an idea of how people there are viewing all of this. Eunice, I remember speaking to a man a few weeks ago, actually, when this first became a kind of national issue, I guess, and he was just saying that this is an industry that just runs through the town.
It does, but it's also fair to say that Scunthorpe has, in recent decades, got used to uncertainty around the plant. In the 70s, for example, there were around 12,000 people who were employed at the British Steelworks in Scunthorpe. Now around 3,500, but the vast majority of the workforce, around 2,700, depend very much on those 2 blast furnaces that operate in Scunthorpe and produce this pure form, this virgin steel, which is needed here in the UK. Now, it's not just those jobs, you've also got the jobs in the supply chain, and of course, in the town, you've got businesses who depend on the workforce. So, as you can imagine, the last thing they want to really hear is talk of those 2 blast furnaces, those operational blast furnaces closing down, and the potential end of steel making in Scunthorpe, which has been going on now for around 160 years. So when we had talk, when we learnt about these talks between the government and the Chinese owners of British Steel to perhaps provide these raw materials, which could run out, we're told, by the middle of May, and which the 2 blast furnaces need to continue being fired up. That was, of course, good news for many people in Scunthorpe, because this looked like securing the future of the plant. Now, it's unclear what progress is being made in those talks you just mentioned before you came to me about those issues being unresolved. But many people that I spoke to today, in fact, some of those people we've heard on our bulletins, say that Scunthorpe will become a ghost town if the plant closes. So much of the town depends on British Steel. So they would want the government to go further. They want the government to nationalise the plant. And of course, it's not just Scunthorpe, Chris, it's also the wider country as well, because these are the only 2 blast furnaces that remain, and so the country would be in this position where it would have to import steel for these major infrastructure projects that we have around the country.
From the people you've spoken to, when they're sort of trying to, point towards how they've got to this point, the responsibility as to how we got here, Where do you find they are pointing? Is it the government? Is it the Chinese owners? Is it global events?
Well, what they're talking about is that many people have said to me, more than one in fact, that what they would have liked is that the company should never have been nationalised. Many people have said to me it's a vital asset, and they feel that they need that security of it being owned by the state and not being exposed to global factors. We've got Chinese owners now. Before that, we've had Tata Steel and the problems they had in Port Talbot. So what many people are saying is bring this company back into state ownership. That would give the workforce a certain degree of security, but also perhaps secure the future of steelmaking, this form of steelmaking here in the UK.
Eunice, thank you very much indeed. That's Eunice Muller, our reporter there in Scunthorpe. So, as I was saying, the talks don't look like they're going to come to a conclusion, a conclusive answer for what's going to happen today. Anyway, still unresolved. Negotiations ongoing, so it looks like we'll keep a close eye on this one tomorrow. It's 4:47.
It is. Still to come, we're going to be speaking shortly to a music journalist and pulp superfan after the band announced their first album in almost 24 years. We'll play you a bit of their new single too, and that is not the only new music on the show. Later, we'll be hearing about the composer still making music 4 years after his death, thanks to an artificial brain. You're looking, well, a quizzical eyebrow raised there, Chris.
It is. I've read that twice now, an article related to that. I'm still slightly struggling to get my head around it.
Well,
I mean, that's not that uncommon.
No.
You know what I mean?
We will have somebody who understands it and can speak in plain English.
Hopefully.
Especially for you.
Oh, well, that would be good.
On the way.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live. 5 Live Drive.
With Claire McDonald and Chris Warburton. On digital radio.
On BBC Sounds. And ask your smart speaker
to play BBC Radio 5 Live. And by the way,
Still got the same swagger, hasn't he?
It's a bit kind of Arcade Fire, that as well.
I do. Yeah, I can hear that. That voice is back. The sound of Jarvis Cocker and Pulp, who are releasing their first single in almost 24 years. As you heard, it's called Spike Island, and the band are putting out a new album too. That album is called More. Speaking on BBC Six Music earlier, Jarvis Cocker said the band had been tempted back into the studio by the overwhelming response to their 2023 reunion tour.
That was a big influence on it, I think, that we played and the songs came back to life, and we did play one new song towards the end of the tour, and nobody threw things at us or left to go to the bar and stuff like that, so we just thought we'd carry on and
see what we could conjure up.
Yeah.
Let's have a chat with Matt Charlton, a music journalist, pulp superfan. Hi, Matt.
Hello, yes.
What do you think of it? You've heard the single. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, I woke up to Grimmy this morning. I mean, not next to me. He was on Six Music and saying that, throwing a head to one of and saying, oh, Pop was going to be on. I thought, it's happening, because they announced last year that they'd signed to Rough Trade, and people don't sign to a new label for legacy recordings and reissues. They sign for new music. So I was just waiting for that moment to drop. And it hasn't disappointed. It's a fantastic single.
I mean, it is good. It really, really is. It's good. It's an instantaneous earworm.
Yeah.
Why do you think? I mean, he's such an incredible frontman, and they are such an idiosyncratic group. The danger is when these kind of groups come back, and they were just so good first time round, that you worry they're going to sort of dilute their legacy. Is it risky?
I don't think so, because actually at the end of Pulp, they had fallen out of the mainstream again. This is Hardcore, which they released after Different Class, which was obviously the album that made them household names. Was very dark and turned a lot of people off, and then We Love Life, they sort of lost their love for life, ironically. And by the time the hits came out, the best of, I don't think it actually made the top 20 when their hits came out initially. So they sort of faded away, even though I was with them right up to the end. And we had a chance to miss them. And we had a chance to reevaluate them, and then when they came back, they actually did a triple comeback in 2011, one song called After You and a few gigs, But then they went away again, and we just had a chance to listen and reevaluate. And as you said, it applies to the people who felt a little bit sort of outcasts or misshapes, as Paul called them back in the day. Sort of David Bowie dynamic, like it's okay to be weird, you're one of us.
Yeah, I mean, they perfectly summed that up, and it was so much about the music, the message, the style. You know, the originality was across the board with this band, wasn't it?
Well, Jarvis is a true original. I interviewed their drummer Nick Banks. He actually released an autobiography last year called So It Started There, to quote a pulp lyric. And he said, well, Jarvis is Jarvis, and so he is a one-off, and the aesthetic that you can't really tell many lead singers by both a silhouette and when they start singing, you instantly go, oh, that's Jarvis, oh, that's David Alden, oh, that's Peter Gallagher. It seems to be of that era that these big personalities applied themselves to the rest of the music and the rest of the aesthetic, and we all went along with it. I was a little bit too young at the time to go to any of their gigs back in the day, but yeah, I still went along with it for my own volition.
So I wasn't, we all wanted to look like them, we all wanted to dress like them. I mean, it's
that cheap nylon charity shop.
All the way, my friend. And also I saw Sway not that long ago, and I was reminded about how these bands know how to deliver at a live gig. And back then, I don't know, maybe this is sort of the terrible generalisation, but there would seem to be a lot more gigging, a lot more touring, and this is a band, Pulp, who were at it for years before they broke through. So they are a band that delivers on stage, and I remember them at Glastonbury. It was absolutely phenomenal, and you think, when you deliver like that, you'll never lose the audience, will you? Because people always want to see you live.
They've gained an audience. I don't think they could, towards the end of their initial tenure, I don't think they could have sold out the O2 twice like they have for this tour coming up in the 2 June dates at the O2. And their Finsbury Park gig, 2 summers ago now, I've never seen that park so packed. And in keeping with the lyrics to Sort of Denise and Wiz, I lost my friends. I couldn't find them anywhere. I could not penetrate that crowd. I had to go around the back because it was so absolutely packed and the enthusiasm was there. And then suddenly the silhouette, the lighting director did all this, the silhouette of Jarvis arrives against the sort of sunset background. The crowd just went absolutely wild. And you were saying about bands that are around now, there's some brilliant idiosyncratic bands that are around now, especially Wet Leg, I would say, has got a great front woman. But guitar music obviously isn't the all-conquering force it used to be. Maybe that's something to do with it. And we're talking about the time. And let's not forget who else is coming back this summer. There's a small band, I don't know if you've heard of, called Oasis, that are getting back together. You should listen to them, they're really good. Some of the things are really good. But we're experiencing that nostalgia because we haven't got those front people. We haven't got that level of idiosyncrasy that they used to be.
I think you're so right. You're so on the money there, and he has this charisma. But I tell you what he has as well. And again, I go back to Brett Anderson, frontman of Sway. They have this incredible stagecraft. They make it look effortless. They make it look as if this is a reactive, which it is a reactive performance, but it's drilled. And it means so much to them, and they're on that stage to work and make sure that you have a good time, and that's definitely Pulp as well, isn't it?
And it comes, both of those bands you just mentioned, Suede and Pulp, are children of Bowie. They grew up watching him and looking, especially at the Ziggy and the Thin White Duke era, seeing his stagecraft and the androgyny. Both Jarvis and Brett Anderson were very androgynous figures back in the day with the sort of foppish haircuts and the art school background and playing around with gender and stuff like that. They have that element of Bowie, and they've carried that torch. And I'm not sure, again, sounding like an old fuddy-duddy, Alex Turner, who is a great frontman in his own right, hasn't carried that on. He's gone more down the Oasis Surly route. So maybe we haven't got that now, which is why I think so many people are so glad to see them come back.
Matt, what a wonderful tribute. I'll see you down the front.
I will, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They'll get some merchandise.
Yeah, dig out my nylon trousers while I go home. Thanks for joining us. That is Matt Charlton, music journalist and Pulp super fan, and this is Spike Island.
This is it, yes.
It's very, very good.
Brett Anderson, by the way, from which well-known town?
Haywards Heath.
You got it, 100%.
Come on.
Yeah.
The second most famous person from Haywards Heath.
Haywards Heath sixth form college alumni.
Yeah. Hey, you.
Just like me.
Just you and Brett.
Yeah. And Richard Osman. Now, the Europa League quarter-finals get underway later. Manchester United, Spurs, Rangers, all in first leg action. 5 Live has commentary of United's match in Lyon. Kick-off is at 8 o'clock. Regular updates from the rest. This is United's only chance of silverware this season, of course. And Ruben Amorim knows there's a load at stake.
In this season, in this context, winning something like that is massive for us, for our confidence. And then to the future, to the next season. To play Champions League in our club is completely different. The environment, the way we are going to face the summer, the budget for the summer, everything is connected.
Well, Melly Barnes is from the Manchester United Supporters Club, hosts the Talking Turf podcast as well. Hello, Melly.
Hi, mate. How are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. I mean, this is it, isn't it? All or nothing.
It's all or nothing. For me personally, Manchester United do need Champions League football, but all would not be lost if we didn't get it. So I don't think there's any kind of, not as much pressure as there would be normally on Ruben Amorim. I think he was brought in when he was brought in and told, like, use this as a massive pre-season. We don't expect anything. And would a season out of Europe be too bad for Manchester United? So they can rebuild, and because what you get with the Champions League is you're attracting a different kind of player.
Well, you're attracting the best players, aren't you?
Well, you would say that years ago, but if you look at some of the players that Manchester United bought of late, then I would have to disagree with you, People are coming in and they're getting absolute tremendous amounts of money, and they're just not performing.
So when Ruben Amorim says, for the future, for the next season, to play Champions League